Coming up on podcast 1376, the Polestar 5 will debut with some cutting-edge tech to challenge the likes of the Porsche Taycan. I'm going to tell you how they're going to do this on the podcast today, so don't tune out. Stick around. Also on the show today, stay tuned because we're talking about the Mercedes-Benz AMG version of the EQE, the EQS's little baby brother. We're talking Hyundai and Kia doing really well in Europe as the shift moves away from those German manufacturers. The Model Y from Tesla is turning up here. And the steering wheel's on the proper side as well. And we're talking about the BMW i5 planned for 2023. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you're watching or listening around the world, it's EV News Daily. My name is Martin Lee, and it's my job to go through every EV story. So you don't have to. I'm here to save your time. I'm nice like that. Welcome to a new executive producer via Patreon, Nathan King. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate it. Get your name in the show notes like Nate's just done. Get checking out patreon.com/EV News Daily. But honestly, you don't have to. I'll do this show anyway, but it's how we fund it and how we make money from this podcast and pay the bills, put it on the air. Now we'll start with news of the Genesis GV60, confirmed for launch in Europe. No great surprise because the Genesis brand is here in Europe. A few weeks ago, they launched their Genesis Europe Instagram page, and so they were always going to be coming here. The GV60 second car they're bringing here, it's the premium spin-off brand of the Hyundai Group, and this is going to go up against the Q4 e-tron, Model Y, I-Pace. There's a video from the Korean market where it's on sale already. The channel's got Asian Petrolhead. I'm a really big fan of his channel, and he did a great review with it in the snow as well. The GV60 is built on the same platform as Ioniq 5 and EV6, so they call it the 800 volt architecture. It runs quite a bit under that actually, but still, powered by a 77.4 kilowatt hour battery, range just under 300 miles on a good day, and of course there's an entry-level single motor version all the way up to an all-wheel drive version. Price is not confirmed yet. Top of the line is going to be the Sport Plus variant, sharing the same underpinnings as the Kia EV6 GT, which we haven't got on sale yet, that GT version. Got the GT line, but it produces 429 horsepower, 0 to 62 miles an hour, 4 seconds flat, which on public roads feels plenty quick enough. And it's got boost mode. You can push a button in the cabin to give you an extra boost of speed. I'm picturing Michael Knight in Knight Rider. No, like the big red button. Extra 54 brake horsepower, and it makes the car fly. That might not be official, but I think it's definitely true. There's also drift mode, which puts the torque split to the rear end. You can hang your rear end out if you want. There's a mental image. 10 to 80% should be 18 minutes. Look, it's the same tech as the cars I just mentioned, but they are upgrading the AC onboard charging, 7.2 to 11 kilowatts, which is useful if you have some high-powered AC posts. Kind of good for most people here. We have 32 amp circuits. We have 240 volts here, and so the Renault Zoe charges pretty quickly. That'll pull probably 8 kilowatts when it should. I call it the 7 kilowatt charger, but that's because I think we have some pretty beefy voltage here, which would be a good name for a college band, wouldn't it? Tonight's Come and see Beefy Voltage playing live. Actually, that'd be terrible, but I'd love them. Right, let's talk about GM keeping the Orion assembly plant idle until spring, leaving no new bolts to buy, says the Detroit Free Press. General Motors will keep its Orion assembly plant idle for another month and a half, saying yesterday they'll restart production of the Bolt and the Bolt EUV April 4th. Man, that is going to be a long shutdown. But they say, well, they've got a good reason for it, of course. Corporate press release. Our unprecedented decision to idle Bolt and EUV production over the past months has enabled us to prioritize battery module replacements, said a GM spokesman, Dan Flores. He said, as a result, we made replacements available to Bolt EV owners who were in our high priority groups. He said that once a dealer receives a Bolt EV or EUV made after April 4th, you can sell that vehicle immediately. All the recalled vehicles on a dealer lot are on a stop sale. So if you've seen some at dealers, you can't actually buy one right now. Orion is going to be building the trucks from GM using the Ultium technology, so the Chevy Silverado and GMC Sierra. Now, when they talked about this recently, they didn't mention the Bolt at all. Not even a passing mention. And I thought that meant that's the end of the Bolt. But the Detroit Free Press say at the end of their article, the trucks, the Silverado, GMC Sierra, made alongside the Bolts when the expansion is complete. So they must have more information than I do. Not hard, but that is good, because I presume that they were kind of de facto letting the Bolt die. Because in 18 months' time, when the trucks come out of that facility, they just didn't say, hey, because they mentioned, we're upgrading Orion and we're going to have the trucks coming out of it. And at no point in that particular, was it an earnings call or a press release, did they say, oh, and the Bolt will continue? But that's a good bit of information. I hope it is true, because the Bolt is a great little car. Now, let's talk about the Mercedes-Benz AMG version of the EQE 53. That would be the baby brother of the EQS. The AMG badged EVs, the EQE, the introduction of that new car, the 53, 4MATIC Plus, strange naming, but anyway, as standard, 617 horsepower, but you can increase it to 677 horsepower with the AMG package. With a pack, the EQE 53's sprint time 0 to 60 miles an hour, 0 to 100 Ks, goes down from 3.4 to 3.2 seconds. Top speed 149. Good on the German autobahns. Everywhere else it gets you your privilege of driving probably taken away. They get caught by the police doing 150. Powering all of this performance is a 90.6 kilowatt hour battery pack made up of 10 modules with 360 cells. They use the pouch type cells. And they're using less reliance on cobalt. So although this article doesn't say, that might well be the NCM 811 chemistry, which is kind of on the cards for a long time. But I don't know what the chemistry is, but that would be certainly less cobalt in that battery. I'll have a look. According to InsideEVs.com, it can be charged at 170 kilowatts and add 112 miles or 180 kilometers of range in 15 minutes. WLTP range is 321 miles or 518 kilometers. The brilliant YouTube channel Autogefühl did a bit of a... It's not a review because he couldn't drive the car. He had to ride along with Mr. Mercedes. But asked some really good questions, actually. Worth watching that video if you're into this car. And at one point he says, isn't this just the baby brother of the EQS? And, you know, the guy who's led the program of the EQE was like, oh, no. This is very much its own car, very different. It looks like a baby EQS to me. But the man in charge of the project would say, no. It's very much its own thing. Right, coming up on the podcast very soon, we're going to be talking about the Polestar 5, and also South Korea is increasing their subsidies to sell more EVs there. Some good news. Stick around, those stories are indeed on the way. Now we'll talk about the Polestar 5. Details emerging. Polestar has revealed new insight into its forthcoming Polestar 5. It's a luxury 4-door sports sedan. It's going to rival the Taycan, the Audi e-tron GT, Model S as well. Comes out in 2024. The Polestar 5 is going to be a truly exciting car because the 4-door saloon is going to be built on their own architecture, a brand new way of building their cars. It's called bonded aluminium structures, and it's developed here in the UK. It uses expertise from the likes of Aston Martin, Lotus, and the famous name in Formula One, McLaren. And F1 teams are all dotted around the area that Polestar are making their base. Kind of our motorsport valley, really. Polestar's British R&D team did start out small, 18 staff 2 years ago, but will grow to 800 staff by the end of this year, writes Evo magazine. I love Evo. Polestar will fit a low-line battery pack with a scoop taken out of the rear passenger section like the Taycan does, but Polestar will allow for much more rear legroom, something that will be mirrored in the 5's ultimate chassis tune, with more relaxed GT-like setup being prioritised, says Evo. I'll pop a link to evo.co.uk in the show notes so you can read more about that and have a look at the little pickies. Polestar saying the 5 will boast segment-leading handling. Wow. If you say that and the segment is the Taycan and the e-tron GT, you really have got to get it right when the car arrives. It's going to have segment-leading rigidity. Safety as well, and torsional rigidity is higher than a traditional two-seat sports car or even a supercar, and the weight is lower as well because of this new manufacturing process. It takes less time to make each car, and it's more efficient and cheaper. Not only does this in-house platform enable them to build the Polestar 5 quicker, and be stiffer, and be lighter, but the production of the EV will be able to pretty much match the Precept. That's the concept when it comes to aesthetics. That concept car, the Precept, was a stunning car. The Polestar 5 sedan is set to debut for a 2024 model year, so out in 2023. I'll pop a link to the drive as well in the show notes if you'd like to read more about that. Now, let's talk Hyundai and Kia winning Europe's EV battle. The Korean brands enjoyed a good year last year. Kia and Hyundai were, or rather, Hyundai and Kia were number 1 and 2 respectively in terms of share gained amongst the members of the Automakers Association. In some of the region's top markets, the good news continued this year already. Kia's off to a flying start in January. And it was easy to overlook the Korean automakers in Europe before the EV revolution. Hyundai, Kia, and the Japanese brands like Toyota, Honda and Nissan didn't quite replicate the success they had appealing to buyers in the US, here in Europe, over recent decades, writes Automotive News Europe. They say that Emilio Herrera, the chief operating officer of Kia Europe, said early in the pandemic that Europe became a focal point because of the EV growth here. I'll pop a link to Automotive News Europe in the show notes so you can read more about that article. All right, let's talk about South Korea now, increasing subsidy funding for this year. The Seoul city government will pay subsidies to buyers of about 14,200 pure EVs in the first half of the year. Under the funding scheme, passenger cars will get a maximum subsidy of about $7,500 equivalent paid by the governments. And they've also got some rules in place for electric trucks as well for more subsidies there. I'll pop a link to Electrive in the show notes if you'd like to read more about that story. Now, the Model Y is arriving on UK shores, and they've put the steering wheel on the proper side for the very first time. And I was lucky enough earlier today to go drive a Model Y, but it's not a right-hand drive version. It's not a UK model, but I'll tell you more about that on the podcast very soon. It was from a friend in Germany who has driven over, who mods cars, who customizes Teslas. So this one was lowered by 40 millimeters, 4 centimeters lower. Germany has a minimum of 7 centimeters, I think it is, from the road to the lowest part of the car, of anything, a bit of plastic coming down or the battery pack or where the lowest part is. So it wasn't a properly lowered car, but it looked like it was, a bit more mean, if you like. And yes, it did ride very hard. Very hard. I'd go a bit softer, but the Model Y does ride very hard. So, the handover events in the UK have just started over the last few hours, but the big one this weekend is going to be in New Milton, in the New Forests, about 25 minutes that way for me, to go see Richard Simons at RSEV. Now, he sold more electric vehicles than you've had hot dinners. So it's the ideal place to go to. He's got a load of people turning up. There's going to be food, there's going to be coffee, and there's going to be a sexier lineup, as in an S, a 3, an X, the UK Y, and an original Roadster. I mean, I said there's going to be one. There's going to be tons because his showroom is absolutely full at the moment. So I'll see you there. I'll be there in the afternoon after my little man has done his swimming practice, actually. So I can't be there for the first thing in the morning. You know, got to do my dad duties on Saturday morning. UK pricing, 55 or 65 grand for the long range and performance versions, respectively. Now let's talk about BMW. The i5 eDrive 40 and the M50 are planned for next year. It's going to go into production in July next year. The sedan will be the first to arrive, followed by the touring models. And because the 5 Series is built on the same platform as the 4 Series, aka the i4, it'll have a similar lineup, we think, in terms of electrically. So the naming conventions will stay the same as the i4. There'll be the i5 eDrive 40, the i5 xDrive 40 for the all-wheel drive, and the i5 M50, which is the one you should get because it's nice and hot. DC fast charging at 200 kilowatts, 10 minutes, adds 90 miles of range, according to BMW blog. So the i4, it's a great little car, and the i5 using pretty much a lot of the same technicals underneath it. 300 miles of range you would hope for in the i5. The M50 version a bit less because of the increased power. Now, we're going to China, and NIO confirming a new model, finally confirming the new model, the SUV. It's called the ES7. It's going to be unveiled as a big 5-seat pure electric SUV, somewhere sitting in their lineup between the ES6 and the ES8. So funnily enough, it's called the ES7. How do they think of that? The co-founder and president of NIO said the model is built on their new platform. It's got a very highly intelligent platform as well. So it's going to have that sensor suite on, which does, it's visible. So their sensor suite on the exterior of the car. A few little lumps and bumps on the outside, but they say that's the way to get to the next stages of autonomy. It's got rooftop LiDAR and a rooftop camera setup as well. And looks the same as the NIO ET7 and the ET5, the sedans. So look forward to more details of that when we get to find out more. Let's talk buses. National Express here in the UK, 130 electric buses coming to them, going to be operated by the Coventry hub, I guess you would call it, made by NFI Group unit Alexander Dennis, a very famous name in buses, and the batteries, the powertrain, the motor, all from BYD. Actually. And let's go to Sydney. The Western Sydney-based company, Custom Denning, has got a contract for 79 new electric buses. And I love these stories because buses are working vehicles and they're quite stinky as well. But, if they're not moving, they're not earning money. So that's great because every mile driven is a mile of electric, not diesel, unlike our own vehicles that sit parked up for most of the time. The New South Wales government investing $70 million in the endeavour. With the twofold purpose of transitioning the state's bus fleet to zero-emissions technology and creating local manufacturing jobs in Western Sydney, writes electrive.com. All of these stories are great, but remember, so many of these operators have thousands of buses. Like in 2019, New South Wales wanted to decarbonise their 8,000-strong bus fleet, and it's a great ambition, but 79 new electric buses only starts to scrape that number. Now, finishing off, Top Gear magazine, website I suppose, has done a brilliant top 10 of the best road legal performance EVs in the world. And I'm going to pop a link to this in the show notes. They've got videos for a lot of them as well, one of their YouTube presenters, writers, journalists, has driven the Lotus EV around their headquarters. That was an amazing video I watched a while ago. It was last year now. But anyway, they say number one, the Rimets Nevera, 120 kilowatt hour battery, 4 motors, 1900 horsepower. Although Mate said, don't discount 2000 horsepower. 0 to 60 miles an hour, 1.85 seconds. But these cars aren't about 0 to 60 because that goes by so quickly. You want to know the 0 to 100 time, or the top speed. Well, 0 to 100, 4.3 seconds. Top speed, 258 miles an hour. The Pininfarina Battista is next in their list. And that is going to be good because, again, the gubbins are supplied by, you guessed it, Rimets. Only 150 of these made. Price tag, 2 million quid. Next, the Model S Plaid on their list. 3 motors, 1,000 horsepower, 9.23 seconds on the quarter mile. The Porsche Taycan Turbo S is next on their list, and they say that it comes in many fine flavours from the entry level to the top of the line. They would get the Taycan Turbo S. The RS Etron GT is next in their list. They say that with 637 horsepower, 0 to 62 miles an hour, 0 to 100 k's in 3.3 seconds. There's little that'll accelerate it, but the only disappointment is that there isn't the estate version yet, which, of course, Porsche have done. They also list the Mustang Mach-E GT, which seems a little bit lightweight compared to the cars we've just been talking about. But they do say 480 brake horsepower makes it more powerful than a 5-litre V8 Mach-E, or like the Mustang Mach-1. And it will go 0 to 60 quicker as well. That's why it's in the list. Lotus EV is next. £2.4 million gets you 4 motors, 4-wheel drive, and they don't quote the 0 to 60 time. Well, they do. It's less than 3 seconds. The 0 to 124 miles an hour time, 6 seconds. Wow. Next in the list, the Aspark Owl. The all-electric Japanese hypercar has been coming for a very long time, but it's entered production now. Limited run of production, 50 cars to be built. Right, 2 more cars. Number 1, the Lucid Air Dream Edition Performance. Now, they say that they're not just taking on Tesla, they're taking on Audi, BMW, and the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. In other words, it means business, it means luxury. And last on the list, and it shouldn't be on the list, is the Tesla Roadster, the new one. Top speed is, it doesn't really matter. 0 to 60 time, it could be anything, couldn't it? Battery size, who knows? This is a car that had an original sale date of 2020. That came and went. Then it was 2021. That came and went. Then it was 2022. You guessed it. Maybe it'll come 2023. And this was like the Tesla Roadster was exciting to talk about years ago when there wasn't so much to talk about in the world of EVs. But these days, we've got some really, really good actual cars. You know, ones they've actually made. And I can't wait to see what they do with that. But it won't be this year. As I mentioned on a recent podcast, Franz, their chief designer at Tesla, went on a podcast and said, hey, we're working hard on it. It's coming along. It's going to be so different from the car that we saw all those years ago because technology's moved on and things have moved on. Or, as people say to me sometimes, maybe they announced the specs of the car and had to wait for the technology to catch up. Hey, we'll wait and see. Just can't wait to see that first Tesla Roadster when it arrives with a real customer. It's going to be an amazing day. But until then, not really a thing. At the minute, it's just a one-off, but hey, we'll wait and see. Thank you so much for watching today. Really enjoyed the podcast today. There's some good stories in there. If you want to check out our audio version of the show, you blimmin' well can. Get me in your ears on Apple, Spotify, Google, and all of the others. There's many, many more. And check out the Patreon page. We haven't got to, but if you want to, have a look at patreon.com/EV News Daily and support the show or not. It's up to you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.